A major severe weather pattern is now starting to take shape across the United States, and this could become one of the busiest storm stretches we've seen in quite a while. Over the next several days, the atmosphere is expected to become increasingly favorable for repeated rounds of strong to severe thunderstorms, first across parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, and then expanding farther north and east as we head into early next week. And this is not just about one storm day. This setup could bring multiple consecutive days of severe weather, including damaging wind gusts, very large hail, flash flooding concerns, and the potential for a few tornadoes in several parts of the country. If you live anywhere from the southern plains into the Midwest, Ozarks, Mississippi Valley, or eventually farther east, this is definitely a forecast you want to pay close attention to. The big picture here is becoming more concerning because the overall weather pattern is starting to lock into place. We have a large trough developing across the western United States, while warmer, more humid air continues to build northward out of the Gulf. That combination is exactly what can help fuel repeated storm systems across the central U.S. In simple terms, the atmosphere is going to have the ingredients needed for storms over and over again. That means instead of one quick severe weather day and then a quiet stretch, we may be entering a more prolonged active pattern, one that could continue not just into next week, but possibly deeper into April as well. And if this pattern continues to evolve the way it currently looks, this could end up being one of the more active stretches of severe weather we've seen in the United States in the past few years. Now, let's break this down day by day, because the timing is going to matter a lot. For the next couple of days, the severe weather threat is still fairly limited and more isolated in nature. We are not expecting a widespread outbreak right away, but we are already beginning to see the early stages of this pattern show up. Today, there is a lower-end severe weather threat focused mainly across parts of central Kansas, where a few isolated storms could become strong enough to produce hail and damaging wind gusts. The tornado threat with today's storms appears to be very low, but if a stronger storm is able to briefly organize, there could still be a couple of isolated severe reports. The main concern through the evening will be around areas near Dodge City, Abilene, and the Interstate 70 corridor, where a few stronger storms may try to develop before gradually weakening later tonight. As those storms move farther east and southeast, they should slowly lose intensity. So for places closer to Wichita and Kansas City, the overall severe weather risk later tonight appears much lower. Heading into Thursday, we'll likely see a little more moisture beginning to return northward, and that should allow for more scattered thunderstorm development from parts of Iowa down through Kansas, Oklahoma, and into the Texas Panhandle. Again, Thursday does not look like a major outbreak day, but a few storms could still become severe with isolated damaging winds and pockets of hail. This is more of a scattered setup than a widespread one, but it still needs to be monitored, especially for anyone with outdoor plans or travel through the Central Plains. Then by Friday, storm coverage may increase a bit more. We're going to be watching from Kansas into Missouri, northern Oklahoma, and the Texas Panhandle, with some storms potentially developing earlier in the day compared to the previous couple of afternoons. Some of those storms could organize into isolated supercells, capable of producing large hail and damaging wind gusts, especially near parts of Springfield, Joplin, Tulsa, and surrounding areas. A few storms on Friday may also move somewhat slowly, especially near the Kansas-Oklahoma border, and that means localized flash flooding could become a concern in spots where heavier rain lingers. So even though Friday still does not appear to be the biggest severe weather day of this stretch, it may act as a transition day, the point where the atmosphere begins to load up for a much more organized weekend setup. And that brings us to Saturday. Saturday looks like the first day where we could begin to see a more organized severe weather event develop, especially across parts of the High Plains, including West Texas and western Oklahoma. The main threats on Saturday appear to be damaging winds and large to very large hail, with at least a low-end tornado threat also possible. At this point, wind shear does not appear exceptionally strong on Saturday, which may help keep the tornado risk more limited compared to some of the days that follow. But the tornado threat is definitely not zero, and any storm that becomes more organized could still produce a brief tornado. This is the day where people across parts of West Texas and western Oklahoma should really begin paying much closer attention. If you have travel plans, outdoor events, or anything that keeps you outside later in the day, Saturday may be the point where the severe weather pattern starts to become much more noticeable. Then by Sunday, this setup may take a much more serious turn. Sunday is shaping up to be a more significant severe weather day than Saturday, and the overall threat could become much more widespread.
As the next storm system moves east out of the Rockies, conditions across the southern plains may become increasingly favorable for stronger storms, including very large hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes. The highest concern right now appears to be from parts of Texas and Oklahoma northward into Kansas, including areas near Dallas-Fort Worth, Waco, Abilene, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and possibly farther north depending on storm placement. And one of the more unusual parts of this setup is just how far north the instability may extend. There is even some indication that strong storms could develop as far north as parts of Minnesota on Sunday if storms are able to fire in that environment. That is a pretty aggressive setup for this point in April, and it shows just how energized the atmosphere may become. Still, the bigger concern remains farther south, where storm coverage and storm intensity could be much more robust. If you live anywhere across north and central Texas or much of Oklahoma, Sunday is absolutely a day to stay weather aware from start to finish. Storms may not be everywhere all day, but where storms do form, they could become severe rather quickly. And then we head into Monday, which right now may be one of the most concerning days in this entire stretch. Monday has the potential to bring a large and widespread severe weather threat from parts of the southern plains into the Midwest. At this point, Monday appears capable of producing all hazards, meaning damaging winds, large hail, flash flooding, and tornadoes could all be on the table depending on how the storm system evolves. The corridor we are watching most closely includes areas near Dallas-Fort Worth, Waco, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Springfield, Kansas City, Des Moines, eastern Nebraska, and possibly farther north or east depending on where the surface low tracks. And this is where the atmosphere may become especially volatile. Forecast instability values by Monday may climb well above 1,000 joules per kilogram, with some areas potentially pushing into the 2,000 to 3,000 range across parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. That is more than enough instability to support strong to severe storms if everything comes together. In fact, many severe weather events this year have happened with significantly less instability than that, so if the strong structure and timing line up properly on Monday, this could become a much more dangerous severe weather day. There is still some uncertainty with exactly where the most intense corridor will set up. If the low-pressure system tracks farther north, the more significant severe threat could shift more into the Midwest. If it tracks a bit farther south, then the bigger concern could focus more heavily into the Ozarks, Oklahoma, and Texas. So Monday is a day we'll need to fine-tune carefully over the next couple of forecast cycles, but the signal for significant severe weather is definitely there. Then by Tuesday, the active weather pattern is expected to continue. Right now, the severe weather risk may extend from parts of the Midwest and Great Lakes back into the lower Mississippi Valley, with another round of all-hazard severe weather possible. That means places like St. Louis, Little Rock, Shreveport, Waco, and surrounding areas may need to keep watching closely depending on how the system evolves. And by Wednesday, the severe weather threat could begin shifting farther east into parts of the Ohio Valley and Deep South, once again with the possibility of strong storms and another round of dangerous weather. Beyond that, forecast confidence naturally starts to drop a bit, but the pattern itself does not look like it wants to shut down anytime soon. In fact, the broader setup suggests that additional storm systems may continue to roll through the plains and central U.S. beyond next week, which means this may not be the end of the story. This could be the beginning of a much more active mid-April severe weather stretch. And that is why this forecast is so important. This is not about one isolated severe thunderstorm day. This is about a pattern that may continue to reload and produce repeated severe weather threats over a long stretch of time. That can become especially dangerous because people tend to pay close attention to the first couple of storm days, but then start to let their guard down as the pattern continues. And that's exactly when weather can catch people off guard. So if you live anywhere across the Great Plains, Southern Plains, Midwest, Ozarks, Mississippi Valley, or farther east later on, now is the time to make sure you're prepared. Make sure you have a way to receive warnings, especially at night. Check your weather alerts. Make sure your phone notifications are turned on. And if you live in a tornado-prone area, now is a good time to review your safe place before the more dangerous days arrive. Over the next several days, travel conditions could also become more difficult in some areas due to heavy rain, lightning, hail, slick roads, reduced visibility, and isolated flooding. So if you're planning to be on the road this weekend or early next week, especially across parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, or the Midwest, make sure you stay up to date with the latest weather forecast trends. The bottom line here is simple. The severe weather pattern across the United States is ramping up, and the next several days could become very active. The first organized severe storms may begin to intensify this weekend, but the more widespread and potentially dangerous setup may arrive from Sunday through Tuesday, with additional threats possible even beyond that. So this is definitely one of those forecasts you do not want to ignore. Stay weather aware, keep checking for updates, and make sure you're ready in case watches or warnings are issued in your area. We're entering a much more dangerous stretch of spring weather across the country, and this may only be the beginning.